So we are going to go ahead and carry on with this series we're doing on basically the whole idea of what did God lay out in the Old Testament beforehand to show us about Jesus' birth. Trying to give us a sneak peek, because that's what all these Old Testament prophecies are about. They're giving us a sneak peek. So the people who are prone to forgetting and prone to straying away, prone to depression, prone to all the things that we're prone to, let's face it, that we can actually have hope. Hope is a good thing. It helps us, it strengthens us, it gives us somewhere to go to. Instead of just falling down and laying in whatever puddle, spiritual puddle we're in, hope gives us the strength to carry on. And God's all about that. He knows that. That's one of His greatest gifts to us, is hope to carry on. And so we're going to be looking through that, and I wanted to get into a passage in Micah, the Old Testament book of Micah. It's towards the back of it. After Jonah and the whale.
And the gourd.
It's
Jonah
before the gourd. Before the gourd. Well before that gourd was created.
No, the gourd and Jonah.
Oh, okay. Oh, and yeah. Gourd and Jonah. Not
The shape?
no. That was not a gourd. That was a plant.
For sure.
Not a gourd. Sorry.
What's the plan?
Okay, well, you know, you're welcome to go back and read the book of Jonah and find the word gourd in there. And if it's there, I'll stand corrected.
Isn't a gourd a plant?
A gourd is a plant. But a plant is not necessarily a gourd.
But it could be.
Okay.
I like this, Justin. This guy's
Would
like
someone pour coffee on you or something? That was not the first time I anticipated. Hell.
Violence
Okay.
in church is not acceptable.
Sometimes it is.
No, it is not.
Are you sure?
I'm
Violence?
sure.
No?
There's a time for
I
war and
challenge
Yeah,
time for
he's
peace.
got a point. Ecclesiastes has a time for war. Ecclesiastes says there's a time for war.
And it's not a church.
But you gotta find a Bible passage that tells you.
I'll find it.
Okay, fine.
I'll come with it next week.
Okay.
I think over our years of friendship, you must understand your time for peace is when I go home.
I really all need.
There's some truth there. Of course, you got my phone number, so.
Yeah, you screwed up.
All right, anyway, Micah, chapter 5. This is, again, when God's laid out these prophecies, He kind of gives us a little piece of the sort of thing that we can look at and quantify and say, okay, this definitely meets this prophecy. And then He gives us more stuff that's kind of vague and more about who Christ would be as a person rather than, facts that you can read off of a sheet. That's helpful, don't get me wrong, because that definitely gave us information. If you guys remember the Christmas story, Luke tells us that when the wise men came, they went to Jerusalem. Go figure. They saw in the stars that a new king had been born in Israel, and they wanted to come welcome and celebrate this king. And so they went to the place where, the king would be, right? The capital city. And so they went and they talked to the king, and the king's like, no, I haven't had any kids. And so Herod, being the sly dog that he was, basically said, yeah, you guys go find him. Matter of fact, I'm going to call in. And so called in his experts on the Jewish scriptures and basically said, okay, where is the Messiah supposed to be found? Because Herod was a smart guy. He knew what was going on. He did not want to lose his throne, though. It didn't matter that it was the Messiah, the Savior of not only his nation, but himself, that is being born. He didn't want him to lose the throne. That was more important to him. So Smart guy in some ways, kind of dumb in others, but ain't that all of us? So, at any rate, he calls in the experts and they say, go to Bethlehem. And so that's where the wise men go. This passage in Micah is how they figured out where the Messiah was going to be born. So, Micah chapter 5. We're not going terribly far, okay? It's 6 verses. All right, so Micah chapter 5, starting in verse 1, it says, mobilize, marshal your troops. The enemy is laying siege to Jerusalem. They will strike Israel's leader in the face with a rod. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, are only a small village among all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel will come from you, one whose origins are from distant past. The people of Israel will be abandoned to their enemies until a woman in labor gives birth. Then at last his fellow countrymen will return from exile to their own land. He will stand to lead his flock with the Lord's strength in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Then his people will live there undisturbed, for he will be highly honored around the world, and he will be the source of peace. When these Assyrians invade our land and break through our defenses, we will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us, 8 princes to lead us. They will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. He will rescue us from the Assyrians when they pour over the borders to invade our land. So the verse that they were really focused in on there is verse 2. It says, but you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, are only a small village in all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel will come from you, one whose origins are from distant past. And this is just really a cool verse. Well, not just the verse, the whole passage. I love how God does things. He's got this passage in here that he is giving us, but he's also giving to the people of Israel that day. See, Assyria was the great power at that point in time, and they were threatening Israel. Israel, of course, was not always as faithful as they should have been, shall we say. And so God routinely let another nation come and rough Israel up a little, you know. And then Israel would cry for mercy, and they would talk to God and say, okay, God, we know we screwed up. Would you come save us? Our bacon's in the pan, and we don't want to cry. So God would relent. He would come save them, and whatever other nation or tribe or whatever, they would be pushed out and defeated. Assyria was the big kingdom of this age. And so the prophecy we see is largely, with all these verses I read, not just verse 2, it's largely addressed to Israel for their current circumstances. Okay, so that's one thing to bear in mind. But God doesn't just let that. He's like, I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So he comes in and he gives us this prophecy that is for Israel back under the days of the Assyrian Empire threatening Israel. But it's also good for Israel at the time of Christ, hundreds of years later. And so it's really kind of, to me, it's cool, just the way he works like that. But they got this. So when you see in verse 1, it says, mobilize, marshal your troops. The enemy is laying siege to Jerusalem. They will strike Israel's leader in the face with a rod. And as much as I wanted to strike Terry in the face with a rod a while ago, no, I'm kidding. I wouldn't. I don't think I would.
Some powder.
They do. It's kind of a weird way to put things. Depending on your version. Actually, Justin, you got yours handy? Can you read verse 1 for us?
No.
You know? All right. Probably on the spot. I can usually rely on you to have the NASB open and ready.
I was watering in other scriptures.
Okay. Cross-referencing. What version is yours?
King James.
King James? Okay, I don't remember for sure how it puts it, but go ahead and read it, if you would, please.
Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops, he hath laid siege against us. Thou shalt smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek.
Okay, so there we go. That's the main thing I was looking for. You got to remember, Israel's history did not always have kings. Okay? Matter of fact, the system of government that God had set up was a system of judges, starting back with Moses. When Moses came and helped set, or I guess you could say he was kind of the figurehead God used to set the Israelite people free from Egypt, and so they were no longer slaves, they were free. It led them to the land of promise, and all that. He was the first one to sit as judge over Israel. So what that meant is not only did he, in this case, literally decide where they would go, but a lot of times he would sit there and basically people would bring their problems. So it wasn't quite as complicated as our court system is today, where you got to file suit and you got to have lawyers and all that. It's kind of like we just come and you know, me and Richard here, we got a problem, so we're going to come over to Evie and we're going to say, I'm going to give you my side, he's going to give you his side, and then you're going to judge what needs to happen in that circumstance. And that basically worked just like the law. Whatever the judgment was in that circumstance. So, and it worked within the law that God had given. So all the 10 Commandments and the other things that he had given. So that was always borne in mind. But I mean, one of the problems I think we have is that as a nation, the United States of America, we don't just have laws. I mean, we talk about the thousands of laws that are in the Old Testament. Some of them are pretty minute. It's nothing compared to the United States. We have libraries. You know, if you're ever watching a video that talks on legal stuff, it's like, well, hey, there's this situation over in Montana, and this is what happened, and this is what the judge said. And so if you're in Montana, this is what it means for you. But for those of us in the rest of the United States, you got to check with your state's laws, and it's complicated. It'd be nice if we could bring some humanity back into the system. And that's what God had set up, is that there was humanity in the system. There was the ability to see. God gave these judges some supernatural insight and wisdom. Did they always use it? No. Especially not when it came to personal lives. But let's face it, that's all of us. We can all give advice to people, and they would be good to follow our advice. But that same advice, if it applies to our life, we like to ignore it. We go on our own way and do our own thing. But at any rate, the judges were in charge. And so that's kind of what's being talked about here, is that this isn't just a matter of, because at this point in time, Israel has a king. So what he's talking about here is not the actual person who's leading the nation. What he's talking about is basically I guess you can say it's the sovereignty of the nation. The authority, the rulership of it, whatever it is, all this authority is piled into one person. And for whatever reason, God decided not to use the term king. He decided to use the term judge here. But that's the idea, is that Assyria isn't just coming to raid. They're coming basically to steal Israel's sovereignty. And so that's what it's talking about when it says that they will strike Israel's leader in the face with a rod. Okay? And so when that's set up, suddenly, that's when God says, okay, now you guys need some eternal hope. It's not enough to just go with, hey, I'm going to deliver you from Assyria. It's like you guys need to see that there's a big picture in mind. That there was a rescue that's been needed from the fall in the garden until this point in time, and it's going to be true also when Jesus came, and it's still true today. Every single one of us, humanity itself is in need of a rescue. And Jesus is the only one who can do it. The Messiah is God himself. And so he gives us verse 2. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, are only a small village among all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel will come from you, one whose origins are from the distant past. Now, if you know, my Bible does not want to keep this page. That vent is going to blow my Bible to a different spot. Then you got to get a different sermon all of a sudden. No, I'm kidding. But at any rate, Bethlehem is a small town. It's much bigger today than it was then. It was like maybe Gustine sized, maybe. Something probably more like Sydney. So it was a little nothing town. It was in the region that God gave to the tribe of Judah. So when the kingdom of Israel split into two pieces, it went with Jerusalem, with the king of Judah, and so they're a little nothing town. I mean, just imagine that someday, I mean, quite possibly even, the greatest president in the United States could have been born in Sydney. I mean, going to school with your kids. Could be one of your kids, I don't know, but anyway, you just don't know. But what are the odds compared to the greatest president of the United States being born, say, in Chicago or New York? I mean, just statistically speaking, it's more likely to happen in the city compared to this little nothing farming community. And so that's basically what he's saying here, is that it's a small village, but it's important. You guys know what the name Bethlehem means? It means the house of bread. And you hear that, it's kind of like, okay, my initial reaction is kind of like right up there with, you guys know what the name Ross means? No, why would you? It means from the peninsula. I am not from a peninsula. It always just made me scratch my head a little bit in that regard. And that's my knee-jerk reaction to a town called the House of Bread. Like, okay, they have bread. I know where to go for bread. All right? No, that's not what it's about. Because do you guys remember? I can't remember exactly where it is. I believe it's John chapter 6, but I don't remember for sure. But in the Gospel of John, Jesus describes himself as the bread of life. Isn't it weird how God arranged the name of a town to describe the Messiah? If you ever feel like God is not in control, that he lets the little details sometimes just slide away, think again. Because even just the name of that town mattered enough to God. He wanted that to be a sign that you got the right place. Bethlehem is not only where King David's going to come from, but eventually it's going to be the Messiah himself, the one who would one day rule the world forever. And that's what goes on in this verse. He says, "But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, are only a small village among all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel will come for you, one whose origins are from distant past." And distant past is an understatement. It's more like from eternity past. Almost literally, the word means from before. Before what? Well, if you leave that kind of empty, you can start treating that like a blank, okay? Is it before Bethlehem? What?
You're talking about David or Melchizedek?
No, we're not talking about either right now.
Talking about Christ.
Okay. Yeah, but
Well, let me finish it. Maybe that'll clarify. Or maybe it'll allow you to get a better understanding of what you need to ask.
okay.
So, at any rate, this ruler is the Messiah. It's Jesus that's coming forth from Bethlehem. His origin is from before. Before what? Like I said, just treat it like a blank. You can put whatever word you want in there. Almost any word will do. Matter of fact, the only word that won't do is before God. That's the only thing that wouldn't work. Because there is no before God. So before Israel, yeah. Before Bethlehem, yeah. Before David, before Melchizedek, before creation, before time, before matter, space, energy, any of it existed. That was his origin. He was before it all. And I love that. So the hope that God is giving here is that it's not just going to be some king. And you're going to have a good, 50 years of some king ruling over Israel. And it's going to be a good 50 years, dang it. He's trying to tell us, hey, this is the eternal king who's coming. Does that answer your question?
No.
No. So where did Melchizedek come in?
Melchizedek there's no documentation in the beginning of his life, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. And if you know, there's a place in the book of Genesis where Abraham runs into a priest of God, which was not a normal event. It's not like monotheism was normal back then. So Abraham runs into a priest of God named Melchizedek. And so a lot of theologians believe that was actually Jesus. Because we see a reference in the Old Testament saying that Jesus is a priest according to the order of Melchizedek.
In Hebrews 7.
What?
In Hebrews 7.
Okay. So, now let's go ahead and move on. Verse 3. Because when people, well, let me just pause. When people are talking about the messianic prophecies here, they pretty much just look at verse 2. But this whole thing, like I said, this whole little chunk is about Jesus. So let's go on. Let's read about it. It says, the people of Israel will be abandoned to their enemies until the woman in labor gives birth. So, again, Assyria is the enemy that people have in their minds when this was written. But it's meant to be true for anything. And while it's always a horrible thing to have some other foreign nation come over, conquer your homeland, and treat you as second-rate citizens at best, I mean, that's always a horrible thing. And Israel had gone through it numerous times. I mean, numerous times. Even though they had gone through it so much, ultimately, the reason these other nations are a problem, or maybe you can point the finger at Israel and say, their lack of faithfulness to God and Him allowing this nation to come in and conquer Israel. Maybe it was Israel that was the problem. The problem is us. Problem is us. Humanity, no matter what decade, century, millennia you go to, we're always the same people. We're always having the same issues, the same problems. We're fallen. We're broken. And we can't fix ourselves. And so ultimately, the enemy doesn't just talk about the Assyrians or whatever nation it is that's threatening. It's about the sin that each of us wrestles with. And so when he comes in and he says the people of Israel will be abandoned to their enemies until the woman in labor gives birth. Again, he's talking about Jesus' birth. So until Jesus comes along, we're all slaves to sin. There's no other option, really. I mean, we can serve God, but the hoops they had to jump through in order just to get basically a year of relief from their sin. Because that's what they had to do every single year on the Day of Atonement. They had to go in, they had to do another sacrifice. Not to mention all the little sacrifices they had to do if they screwed up, or if they lied, or they cheated, or whatever. Come in and sacrifice a turtle dove, or an oxen, or something else. It was a constant thing. And it was always just literally a Band-Aid, just being put over a gaping wound. And it just was not up to the task. And that's, I think, what God was trying to show us through those sacrifices, that never ever would the sacrifice of an animal fix our sin. It was always just that Band-Aid. We needed an eternal, permanent solution that can't be undone. And that's what he's talking about. That's why, again, in verse 2, it's talking about, hey, this is a ruler whose origins are from before. And so the enemies that come in and they're threatening us, well, the real enemy is sin. And it's going to keep threatening us until Jesus comes in. In this case, into the world, but also on an individual level. He's got to come into our life. We've got to make him our king of our lives. Verse 4, and he will stand to lead his flock with the word of strength in the majesty of the name of his God. For then his people will live there undisturbed, for he will be highly honored around the world. So he's telling us that he's going to come in, he's going to lead his people in the name, in the word strength, and in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Now, that seems kind of weird, because again, you're talking about a ruler whose origins come from before. This is one of those passages, it's not a slam dunk, so don't get me wrong, but this is one of those passages that really you come to, it's like, this doesn't make sense to me without the doctrine we call the Trinity. If you don't understand that God is three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and that they are all co-equal, co-eternal, and that none is, I mean, Jesus is completely God. He's no less God without the Father, but the Father's always there. Same with the Spirit. It all works together. It's always a complicated thing to try to describe. But it's still the only thing that, to me, in my mind, makes sense out of this. That this eternal being would come in, be the king, and he's going to lead his flock in the Lord's strength and in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Then his people will live there undisturbed, for he will be highly honored around the world. And so he is. And he will be even more so. Verse 5. And he will be the source of peace. When the Assyrians invade our land and break through our defenses, he will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us and 8 princes to lead us. Okay, so right there, that first phrase, he will be the source of our peace. That's probably the one you need to latch onto the most. It's simple and it's so true. And this isn't peace like we typically define it. Our word is kind of cheap compared to this. If you've seen movies back, maybe the Chosen or some other movie like the Jesus film or whatever, stuff back in biblical times, you hear the word thrown around a lot. The word is shalom. You still hear it. You still hear it used. Or maybe you'll hear someone say, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. This is what they're asking for. It's the word shalom. And it's not just peace. It's welfare. It's God's favor. It's everything good. It's health. It's benefit. It's all the good stuff. None of the bad stuff. This is what he's talking about bringing us. He will be the source of all the good things. Because we can't find it anywhere else in this world. We can find momentary peace. I've found a lot of peace in being around my wife. I usually can find some small measure of peace being around my kids.
We work hard to eradicate that.
I know. Then they figure out, oh wait, we're not doing our job, and so they try to ruin that. But anyway, the point is that there's times Tanya and I fight. There's times I get mad at the kids, and that peace that they gave me is ruined. It's always true. We're not going to find a lasting peace anywhere else but in God. Always true. It's never going to be any different. And so that's the thing you really need to grab onto from this verse, that he will be the source of our peace. But they get into some language that's kind of weird after this, but it's good. When the Assyrians invade our land and break through our defenses. So again, remember that at this point we're treating the Assyrians kind of like a symbol. They're whoever it is that's opposing God's people. Okay? So whether you're talking about it in a truly metaphorical sense like sin, or whether you're talking about it like literally the Assyrians are at the gate, or maybe it's just a coworker who's just a jerk. I don't know, whatever. All the stuff it can be. So verse 5, when the Assyrians invade our land and break through our defenses, we will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us and 8 princes to lead us. If you're just going to take things literally, this is where things just don't make sense. Because we're talking about one ruler out of Bethlehem. And okay, he's God. But okay, now we got 7 rulers? Wait, what? And 8 princes? What is this? Well, depending on the version you got, it may actually say 7 shepherds. Okay? And so what it's trying to do is give us this idea that shepherds are guardians. They're the ones who guard that peace. The whole idea of a flock of sheep. And they're not going to be disturbed by wolves or whatever other predators in the area wanting a meal. The peace of these sheep is the ability to graze and nap and drink in peace and not having to wonder if they're in danger. And it's the shepherds who guarantee that. You guys might remember, you might remember that David, when he was a shepherd, he killed a bear and a lion. That was, I won't say that was par for the course, because that still seems a little unusual to me. But I guess I have not having been a shepherd, I wouldn't know what's normal. So the point is that whatever it is that was gunning for sheep, the shepherd takes care of it. Now the numbers have a significance in the Bible. Now if you've heard this before, 7 is often a number for completion or perfection. Okay? So what it's saying is that these shepherds, these guardians, these rulers, they have authority over the sheep, they have the protection, they have the protection of the sheep in mind, and this number of 7, it's a perfect number. It's meant to show us that they have that complete authority, they have that complete protection over these people. Okay? And when he says in the very next phrase, you see, and we will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us, 8 princes to lead us. This is where things get, you don't hear so much about the number 8, but it's a significant number too, because if you got 1 through 6, and the number 7 is completion or perfection, right? So if you got 8, basically what happens is you got a new beginning. And that's where I started going, okay, God, this is really good stuff. Because he's saying that this ruler, this one from Bethlehem, he's going to give a new beginning of a rule. It's not going to be like anything we've experienced before. It's God in control as we haven't seen. Now, a lot of this we haven't seen. Well, this level of peace, this level of authority under God, this level of everything else we haven't seen yet. This is what we're going to get when Christ comes back. When he comes again, suddenly the earth is going to go under his authority. And eventually all rebellion goes away and there's just peace forever. This is the sort of thing it's talking about. And to the Jewish mind, they understand these numbers and what they signify. And so they kind of, I think they had a good understanding. But for those of us in the U.S., we typically don't hear about this. So it kind of goes over our head. We just see numbers like we're talking about one guy from Bethlehem and 7 shepherds and 8 princes. Okay, I'm not confused at all. But if you understand the symbolism that God's trying to evoke, suddenly it all piles back into Jesus. And you understand that he's the shepherd, which, he told us he's the good shepherd. And just like the crucifixion, we saw that, or we heard about the sign being hung over him that said, Jesus, King of the Jews. He was, and he is, and he ever will be. And that's what he's trying to get at. And I love it. Verse 6, they will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. He will rescue us from the Assyrians when they pour over the borders to invade our land. So, and Justin, can I get you to read the NAS for me on that one?
Yeah. I'm doing it again.
You're off chasing rabbits.
I am.
That's a good thing.
Which verse was it again?
Verse 6.
They will shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, the land of Nimrod at its entrances, and he will deliver us from the Assyrian when he attacks our land and he tramples our territory.
So that they will shepherd Assyria with the sword. That's a weird thing to me. I don't think of shepherds and swords. It's just not a normal combination to me. I think about the staff. I can think about to David when he was a shepherd, he had the sling. But I just don't see shepherds walking around with swords. I mean, it'd be like modern day shepherds, because there are actually still people who do that for a living. It'd be like them walking around with an AK-47 slung over their shoulder.
Which they do.
Sometimes, yes, depending. But they're usually not so much concerned about the predators as the people.
In Australia,
Oh yeah?
the people that on the stations that watch over I know they have guns on the back of their vehicles.
Yeah.
Because the dingoes and they're just so bad, they have to,
Gotcha.
that's what they have to have.
Okay.
They even hire people to go and hunt them.
Yeah.
They're that bad.
Okay. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised if there's places that can do it, it'd be Australia.
Maybe it doesn't mean literal swords, maybe it means the sword of the Spirit, like God's word.
I could, yeah. I think a lot of this is symbolic territory, so we can kind of get into some heavy interpretation, and it's good. So I think personally that when it's talking about ruling Assyria or this version says ruling Assyria with a sword, or shepherding with a sword. I think basically it comes down to more spiritual matters than not. But regardless, God is saying at some point in time, the enemies are not going to be a danger. Regardless of whatever method you think it's going to happen. That Assyria is not going to be a problem anymore. And he will enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. Now I'm just curious, what does the name or the word Nimrod mean to you guys?
Nimrod's in the news.
What's
It's
a
a radio
Nimrod?
thing,
It's
it's
a
a radio
radio
thing, it's
thing.
stupid.
Okay, see,
It's a joke, it's a, like,
That's what stupid,
Stupid.
what people do stupidly.
Right.
They don't.
actually, not doing research from this, I saw a video this week that the English language was reshaped with Looney Tunes on this, okay? Looney Tunes, the whole thing. So imagine Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, all right? You got them, and Bugs Bunny has pulled some prank on Elmer Fudd, fooled him, and he's laughing, hilarious. He's really hard at Elmer Fudd, and he's saying, "What a maroon, what a Nimrod." That's what shaped our definition of it. What we didn't realize is that Nimrod in the Bible was a mighty hunter. So he's not trying to say that Elmer Fudd was being stupid. He's using that name ironically. He's saying he is so very not a mighty hunter. But being kids, we didn't know and didn't understand. So it reshaped the way everyone after World War II thought about the word Nimrod. And it became a part of our local normal way of using that term. Is that Nimrod is now an idiot. That's basically what we think of. But biblically speaking, a Nimrod was, the name means a rebel, okay? But the only Nimrod mentioned, and he's mentioned more than once, it was, and basically it's just that, he was a mighty hunter, okay? So, you come into this passage, and you get it, you're not talking about an idiot, you're talking about a mighty hunter. So, they will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. He will rescue us from the Assyrians when they pour over the borders and invade our land.
Weren't Nimrod's descendants one of the tribes around Canaan?
No. No.
I can't remember that song.
No. You remember incorrectly. So if you look over at Justin's shoulder, he can do a search for Nimrod. I think you can find it in 3 places, 5 places. I don't remember for sure, but it's not very much. There's no tribe of Nimrod. No nearby people group called the Nimrods. But anyway, so all this kind of comes back again. Just to sum it all up, put it in a box with a nice ribbon on it. This is all talking about Jesus. This is all talking about the fact that Israel has struggled against, whether it was Assyria or someone else, doesn't matter. Israel's always had enemies. The church has enemies. The church is its own worst enemy, quite possibly. You can make an argument that it's Satan himself, and probably you're right, but barring that, I found that in my life, the only thing Satan needs to do is get me started, and I'm off. And after that, he can trust me to screw things up on my own. And I can do it very well. So, maybe him, maybe us, either way. Whatever the enemy is, God's trying to tell us that there's a delivery coming. That there's an eternal hope that is in store for all of us. And it's not found in King David. It's not found in anything else. And this is what I wish Herod would have understood back then. When he talked to those magi or wise men or whatever you want to call them, when they came and they said, hey, where do we find this Messiah, this king? And he's like, well, let me check with the experts. I wish the experts had told him. Maybe he didn't know, I don't know. But I wish that they'd sat him down and explained to him the whole passage. It's like, there's an eternal hope that yes, even you, Herod, you need this hope. And I don't care how much you hate God, how much you hate Christianity. I don't care if you grew up in the church and you adore God and you are His most faithful servant. Everyone in between, those two extremes, we all have the same need. We need that hope that God is giving us right here. That there's an eternal ruler who is coming. And someday, the enemies that we've been wrestling with, whatever kind of enemy it is, that's going to be in the past. That's going to be a bad memory. And that's all. And there's hope. And there, He will, just like it says in verse 5, and He will be the source of peace. Remember, it's not just peace. It's sustenance. It's blessing. It's God's favor. It's all that. It's all found in Jesus. And that's the only place it is ever going to be found. So this Christmas, again, when you're sitting down with your kids or your family and there's wrapping paper and ribbons flying all over the place, that's fun, that's great, that's good. I'm not trying to take away from it. Please take a moment and remember there's an eternal hope that you're celebrating, because those gifts are just a way to celebrate. That meal, that Christmas dinner that you are maybe worked hard in order to make happen, that's to celebrate the eternal hope that we have. It's all aimed at Him. And yes, we have a tendency to make it different, and Santa's taken a whole life of his own. But he hasn't taken the truth of the holiday. The truth of the holiday is that Jesus was born, that God came in human flesh to defeat everything that needed defeating. Let's pray. Lord God, I come to you, and I'm just so humbled by the fact that you left heaven, the perfect place where angels adore you 24/7, to be born in a manger, in a barn, in a little out-of-the-way nothing town, with the closest king hunting you. You left it all behind for us, for our peace, for our hope. So thank you. I can't say thank you enough. And my mind just keeps telling me that the only response I have to give is I give you my life. I'm yours. I'm yours because of what you did in Bethlehem. I'm yours for what you did in those 3.5 years of ministry with Peter and John and Bartholomew and all those guys. With people whose names I don't know. But I know their story. I know how they got healed. I know what they got healed of. And that thief on the cross that I just feels like it should be me. The one who started out bad, mocking you and making fun of you, and in the end said, please remember me. That's me. So help us hold on to the hope that you've given us, that there is a someday where pain and death and sorrow and enemies and everything else is going to be a memory. I thank you for that hope. Help us to hold fast to it. Pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.